Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We are here with a stand video, and we're featuring CheweyBadge on the PS4 in the Object 263, which is, quite frankly, one of the weirdest looking tank destroyers you'll ever see in your life. More so on the premise that it looks like it's got no armor, but it has armor. Lots of armor. We're going to be going on Mountain Pass, and we're starting from what I consider to be the good spawn. Unfortunately, there's a VK, a VK alpha that isn't too appreciative that is actually in the game. Does give him a quick little bump, quick little shot, making sure he knows his presence is there. And we're going to be moving around, and we're going to be watching how it is that the CheweyBadge actually plays the game. And I'll be giving some little pointers as to what he's actually doing and to why he's doing them. Some very, very small things that you'll see in the game, which, aside from the pit maneuver done on the VK Alpha, will actually benefit you if you actually want to try and implement these in any sort of way. So we're going to be rushing across the middle, something different to what I would do myself. There's quite a few people on the other side, might be able to get the push around, and we're looking to see if we can, from this position at the very least, be aggressive in the push. Because they're in a platoon together with other tanks as well, there'll be communication going between each one of the players to say exactly where people are, what it is they're doing, and what it is they're shooting at. So as you can see now, the back chat is having a quick little pop shot down into C7 with a couple of tanks they can see. Unfortunately, when CheweyBadge actually gets there, the tank's already destroyed, so by the time he gets within the range of being able to view them and shoot them, they're already dead tanks. Out the game within a minute and 20 seconds. Now we're moving on. We can see the couple of people that are pushing around the side. Not really the best idea for them to do, especially with the people that are coming round. But then you see there's only 2 tanks visible. But there are 2 tanks visible for a fair amount of time. And you can see what Chewey's done. He's going to put his reticule over the tanks themselves to see what they specifically are. And what it is he can actually do with his tank. In this case, what we're looking to do is to push and be aggressive as possible. Push them back. And as you can see again, using the same premise, putting the aimer on the tanks themselves to see what's coming. And then from there you can work out, can I really push these tanks and be aggressive? Can I make them roll back? Can I make them make shots that they don't need to? Fortunately, because of the amount of people that are around on his side itself, there aren't many tanks that are taking interest in him himself, as they should do. But even if they did, they would find themselves very much dead. All the shots that hit the 263 bounce. I mean, I have such a massive mare with this tank. I hate coming across it. If I ever do, I just load up heat or APCR. I'm not too fussed, as long as the tank gets out of the game. And you'll see a bit further on why it is that this tank is so goddamn powerful. It might only have a low 500 odd alpha damaging gun. The rate of fire really picks up with it, and it's really quite good, but that armour really does lend itself to be a fantastic tank destroyer. And because it's Russian, obviously Raim is not particularly amazing, but even with that being the case, you can rely on the armour. I can't get over it, it's so good. So as we're going a bit further into the game itself, a couple of platoon mates are taking other people out. Encounter's a bit difficult on Mountain Pass because people tend to play it differently, even though it should be played the same. The flag is never really something that's capped because of how exposed it is. So you always tend to find people going around exactly the same routes as they do on standard battle. And it is basically a perfect case in point is this map. Coming up against what is the E75 and the Type 4 Heavy, or the Type 5, I can't remember which. Again, the Heavy itself is kind of similar to the 263 in its trolley armor, as you can see, bouncing in points where you don't expect to bounce, and also bouncing points where you can actually pen beforehand. Okay, so it lends itself to be one of those annoying tanks. But if you get a shot on the side, you'll more than likely penetrate. It is literally a massive box with lots of armor on the front and nothing on the sides. One thing you do tend to notice as well when Chewey's playing is there's a lot of auto aiming rather than using the actual zoom. Because of the tank's penetration rounds on the front of it, you can very much guarantee that you're going to get a penetration, so there's not really much of a need to actually zoom in. Whilst I do zoom in myself just to make sure I don't remove the option of RNG, or the fact that auto aim actually locks onto the centre of the tank, it allows me to make sure that the shot has a really good chance of going through. There are some occasions when RB is being used, that being on the actual Xbox itself, and you don't get the shot that you need. Case in point, the E75 takes a bouncing round. It could be that the shot itself hit the upper front plate rather than the lower front plate. So now as we're going a bit further into the game, it's still sort of a stalemate, you could say. Every now and then there's a few tanks being taken out, but it's very few and far between. There's still a lot of tanks with a lot of health, but fortunately because the push was made by the platoon mate in the back chat coming forward, it allows Chewey to push forward and use E75 as cover from the Type 4 Heavy. Unfortunately, the high explosive rounds don't do the damage that's enough to take them out, but here's where we get to see why it is the 263 is ridiculous. We have point blank range E75s bouncing. We have 9 on a point blank range Type 5 heavy bouncing. But we have some HE shells that don't like to go through anyway, so we'll just load up standard AP rounds and go through the front of it. Look at the way this tank works. It's just phenomenal. So using the tank's armor to its advantage in pushing forward, knowing when to push, having the platoon mates coming around and flanking, and taking the opportunity to ensure that, right, we know that nothing else is behind these tanks so we can push forward and face hook them. Using the advantage of the full map, when you could see every single person that was actually on their team and where they are, you can now figure out what it is you want to do. You know that you can push forward, you're not going to get flanked. Fortunately, because the artillery is on the ground, which was spotted earlier, you don't have the artillery raining shots down on you, because it's so difficult to play artillery nowadays. Lol joke. Moving back into the actual game itself, taking a couple of pot shots on the T57 is not going to be the most ideal thing because of the gun depression in this tank is not particularly amazing. Now fortunately, Chewie takes advantage of that and starts to go around towards the bridge. Get some rear shots on people. They're going to be concentrating on what's behind him and actually moving down, and they themselves will actually keep them there. They're not going to be likely to want to engage too much. There's a lot of tanks down there that are tier 10. There are a lot of tanks down there with a lot of firepower. The T57 heavy, you could consider it being a tank which can be a bit poor maybe, but it's not something you would just take lightly. It's still a very powerful tank, and if you find yourself in a position where you're side on, which will be shown later on, you will see why it is that tank is not to be taken as a face value one that is poor. Again, these side shots that are coming in, beautiful placement for the object, and again, because of the location of where the tanks are down below, even when they're firing up, it's highly unlikely in the 263 that they'll actually do anything unless he's physically side onto them. They are more likely to bounce, not least of which a T32 tier 8. The 268 being one of the few tanks left alive that has the opportunity to pen, but having the height advantage up here means it gives them the opportunity of not actually taking any damage. The entire game is just phenomenal how much this health is left on this tank when you consider what it is that's actually been shooting at him. The 268 being a prime example, the 75, the Type 5 heavy, these are not terrible tanks. Very good RNG roll, the little auto lock. But this is a tank destroyer with uber penetration on them rounds, and it's not doing anything to him. Now the E75 has been caught short by the T57 heavy, so he's able to get a couple of side shots into him. 450 alpha, doesn't sound like very much from a heavy tank to be perfectly honest, but then when you times that by 4 you can see the sheer power of a T57 heavy, given the opportunity played like a medium. Only 2 tanks left in the game, and again Chewey's not wanting to relent up, using the cover as much as possible. And you'll also notice, because it's a T57 autoloader, you want to ensure that you're not in a position whereby he can track you and maybe get a weak spot shot on you. There are weak spots on this tank, it just means to be whether people actually aim at them. Taking out the E75 is the next best thing, but now you see the tank is being rolled backwards and forwards, trying to give every opportunity for RNG to tell those rounds to go into absolute orbit. One of them does pen, that's okay, not taking too much of damage when you consider that 2 of them have actually bounced. Fortunately, now it allows them to give the opportunity for that ridiculous rate of fire to come back and go bye-bye. So now we're sat on 5 kills. We've just got a medium tank left, and he has gone and taken out a light tank on their base. Their own starting spawn, I should say. And can he get the top gun? Well, we'll wait and see. The 263 is one of those tanks which is not often seen on the battlefield. I'm not quite sure why it is that it's not particularly seen on a regular basis. The types of plays that you can do in it, whether you want to be an aggressive player, as it is the case on here on Mountain Pass, or whether you want to be a more passive player if you're on proc, you have the option to. Your rate of fire allows you to be, quite honestly, playing different roles. And finally, when you find yourself in a position of being able to be aggressive, you can drop 9.5k damage. And the gun only does like 500 or 600 alpha damage. It's ridiculous. The block damage as well, absolutely off the chart. And finally, when it comes down to it, firing 26 shots, 20 and getting the damaging hits. What an absolute stormer of a game. And again, 5,580 block damage is not something you should be seeing in a Russian TD, considering that the 268 have been another one which is trolley armor every now and then, but does bounce. So hopefully, I hope you enjoyed the video. Some beautiful platoon work going on between CheweyBadge. and the back chat and the artillery. If you did, don't forget to give this video likes, and we'll be looking to give out some prizes to Chewy if we can reach 15 likes. Thanks very much for the time. See you later.